ask anybody's question but yours. You're an idiot. And really a disloyal person.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Disloyal Idiots podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network. Christian de Guzman here, alongside Steve Haller, as we are both desperately out of practice of podcast work, especially just because it's the off-season in Syracuse. There's not much to talk about. It's off-season in college athletics, even though for some reason there is a lot to talk about in terms of the Syracuse world of athletics.
Yeah, it's a weird situation right now, and we've had a couple weeks off at this point. Sorry for anyone who was looking for us in their feeds weekly. We did have a bit of a rough early summer. I think we'll be back on some semblance of a cadence coming through the summer. We'll also try and get some of the new blood from our sister site, Trey Nunes is an Absolute Magician, on to give some of their thoughts. We've got a couple of actual students that only know Fran Brown, or like
such a weird experience. And of course, what better way to initiate the new blood of our sister site at Nudes Edition by immediately giving them a 44 controversy?
Yeah, why not? And do we want to just dive into that one? Because I have thoughts.
I have thoughts as well. And
do you want the crotchety old guy's thoughts or the crotchety younger guy's thoughts?
Let's go with your thoughts first, because obviously, okay, let's look at our live stream timer. We are 10 seconds away from hitting 2 minutes. Steve is old joke insert here, because he is, of course, the elder statesman of the program who has been around Syracuse Athletics more and knows kind of what 44 means to not only himself, but to people of his similar generation. Because I feel like, and this might play my hand a little bit, I feel like 44 meant a lot more to people of Steve's generation. And I'd like to hear what he has to say about that.
Well, and that's the weird thing is, like, at 40, I'm of the generation that actually saw a 44 play in Conrad. That it's a number, guys. I don't know if I'm weird for my generation. It's something that should be held in reverence. It's something that for years, if they weren't going to retire Ernie Davis and Floyd Little and Jim Brown, and after that, if they weren't going to retire that number in the 80s after that era, and they let people wear it all the way through Rob Conrad in the late 90s, what are you doing? Why would you retire it? Why did Doc Gross retire it? It was a symbol of Syracuse, and to not see it on the field, to me, seems weird. I may be strange for my generation, but it really should be on the court. Like, I became a Syracuse basketball fan watching John Wallace wear it in 1996. Like, that was the run that cemented me as a Syracuse basketball fan. And the fact that no one's worn it since, I mean, basketball aside, that's its own thing. Like DC and those comments, I don't understand why he made them. Your jersey is retired, not your number. It's a thing. Jerry's number's hanging there, and people have worn 3. Like, what are you better than him when it comes to being honored? Where does the line get drawn? Like, we've gone over, Syracuse doesn't retire numbers outside of 44 for gross being gross and wanting to pomp and circumstance it. I don't know if people coming into the program understand what 44 was and why it was a thing, and that it was because of on-field accomplishments that the legend became a legend. And there's no way to further that legend if it's not going to continue on the field. Because at some point, we're getting close to, we're 20 years off of a century from when those guys stepped on the field the first time for Syracuse. It's insane.
And I guarantee
what your thoughts are, but that I think I started our first pod in a while out with a nice diatribe.
Well, and I think I'm part of the generation that unless they watched Express, the movie,
Yep.
they had no idea what 44 meant to Syracuse and to its athletic tradition. I only know of 44 because of watching that movie. I mean, I didn't. I mean, we know during my time of growing up, and probably for a while, unless Fran Brown or some other coach can turn it around, most other people aren't going to know about the traditions of Syracuse athletics,
Right.
which means because they're just not going to get the national eyes that other programs do get. That's a story for another time on how Syracuse eventually transitions to that point. But I didn't know what 44 meant to Syracuse. I didn't really sink in until I started to learn more about Syracuse athletics because I was heading to the school. And when you look at jersey retirements, I and Steve come from the New York Yankees line of way too many jersey retirements.
Yes.
But we also come from the Syracuse athletics line, which also has a jersey that may be, and this could be controversial, maybe, and you could talk about this if you want, more iconic in terms of what it means to that specific sport than a Syracuse 44. That is a Syracuse men's lacrosse 22.
Yeah.
And the Syracuse men's lacrosse 22 has yet to be retired. It probably would be a long way from being retired because what I like, especially in lacrosse, and you see this in multiple programs, you think to Maryland with this program is when they do this with their jerseys as well. They give a certain number to a player who is deserving of that honor. Maryland does it with 1. Obviously, Syracuse does it with 22. And you see with Syracuse also what they do with 22 in men's lacrosse is that they do not give out that number if no one is deserving of it. There was quite a few times in the past couple of years between Jojo Marasco, Jordan Evans, and Joey Spallina where the 22 was not given out. So that is totally fine. And I think that's how a jersey number, in my opinion, should be worn and respected and shown off in terms of the tradition of the sport. Because you can't go a Syracuse lacrosse game without knowing 22. Honestly, you in this day and age, most Syracuse football games that are broadcast can go by without being 44 mentioned.
Yeah,
And
that's kind of crazy.
and
Crazy
to
to think about at this point.
And when you circle it all back to where this discussion online started, with Derek Coleman being a little bit infuriated that Eddie Lampkin is going to wear 44 for the Syracuse Orange men's basketball team this year, let's also remember 44 isn't synonymous with the men's basketball program. Yes, 44 is a number that it will mean a lot to Syracuse, but specifically to that men's basketball program, it doesn't mean that whole much. Now, you could maybe argue if someone was going to take a Carmelo Anthony 15 or a Pearl Washington 31, which obviously I don't think anyone is going to take a Pearl Washington 31, or even like you said, Steve, if you really want to stretch for it, a Jerry McNamara 3. But John Wallace and Derek Coleman are your 44 jerseys. And while they were great players with Syracuse men's basketball, no doubt, they don't have the same legend that a Carmelo Anthony or a Pearl Washington holds with that Syracuse program. And so if you're mad because someone is wearing that jersey, it's you would have to be at the level of in lacrosse a Syracuse 22, a Maryland 1, or in football a Syracuse 44.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to Derek Coleman's career. He had a great career with the Syracuse Orange.
Outstanding. 100%. One of the top careers that have ever graced Jim Boeheim Court before it was called that.
People in Miami and people in Los Angeles are still going to wear a LeBron 6 when he leaves the
Yeah.
game of basketball.
Yeah. I mean, right now, the retired basketball uniforms for Syracuse, basketball, because redundancy,
Mhm.
Hack's number 1, which people wear number 1 all the time.
Yeah.
Jerry's number 3. Ronnie Cycli's number 4, all well in circulation. Vic Hansen's number 8. Mello at 15. Billy Gabor at 17. Wilmot Sadat Singh at 19. Sherm at 20. Mr. High Sox himself at 21. Dave Bing at 22. Dennis Duval at 22. Billy at 30. Pearl at 31. DC and Wallace at 44. And then Louie and Bowie at 50 and 55. There's, in all honesty, like, Mello right now is the only one that seems like it's sacred that people haven't worn. There's probably not a giant draw to wear 50 and 55. But I believe Sean Williams might have worn 55 at one point. Like, I don't know. It seems like if Syracuse's concept is to retire the uniform, not the number, then why is there controversy over some sacred whatever?
And if you really want to have some sacred number be treated that way, I think this goes across all sports. I think I've shown my hand about this clearly. I think it should go down the lacrosse route that so many programs in lacrosse have done of the number being worn to demonstrate a player who is worthy of wearing said number.
Which is what they did with 44 for a long time. I mean, after Ernie Davis, I brought receipts. After Floyd, you had Richard Panchisen, who was a quarterback right after him, 67 to 69. Mandel Robinson, a running back. Glenn Moore, a running back. Michael Owens, a running back. Terry Richardson, a running back. And Rob Conrad, a fullback. That's a decent amount of circulation of that number after Floyd Little and before Rob Conrad, with none of those names screaming like Powell Brothers or Gate Brothers like 22 does in lacrosse.
I just think that this is a number that, if one of the ways that I think when our modern brains think about college athletics right now, one of the reasons why so many people love college athletics is tradition.
Yeah.
And everyone associated with this podcast loves the upcoming release of EA College Football 25.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons why so many people are excited about EA College Football 25 is that they can once again, with updated graphics and updated new engine technology, new generation of consoles, can experience collegiate traditions back in the virtual world like they were when they were once kids.
Yeah.
Think about this from Syracuse's perspective. What kind of tradition amongst any sport for Syracuse is there really to celebrate that is consistently celebrated and consistently brought up throughout the entirety of athletics? The biggest ones are the 22 and 44. And the further that the 44 is disassociated with the team because it is not prevalent and there for it to be seen, is a way that number becomes more and more meaningless, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because we are straying further and further away from the history where it becomes relevant that number was created in. And the fact that 22 is still relevant goes to show you why that number is still relevant, because the people who are wearing that number uphold that tradition and want to uphold it. This is the best thing Syracuse has going for it in terms of tradition, 22 and 44.
Yeah.
And now the power of the number 44, in my opinion, is waning because no one wants to wear it, or no one in at least the upper offices of the Syracuse athletic program want to remake it a thing.
Yeah, and I wonder what Fran will do with that, because it would be hypothetically, like especially someone like Fran who can spin a yarn and who can sell recruits. That would be a hypothetical, you know, very very solid recruiting tool.
One of the main reasons why Syracuse got Joey Spallina, it probably wasn't the only reason, and it probably wasn't the biggest reason, but one of the small reasons why Syracuse got Joey Spallina, who was the number one recruit in the class of, I believe it was 2023 or 24, whichever. Yeah, it was 23. One of the main reasons why Spallina was attracted to come to Syracuse was because he was promised by Desco at the time to get the number 22 jersey immediately as a freshman.
More on Spallinas later.
Indeed, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think we're of the same ilk, that this got blown out of proportion. I get where Derek's coming from. I 100% understand, especially why he would be frustrated with it. I don't agree with the sentiment. I also never wore the number, but like,
It's also a different sport.
oh yes, also true.
It's a different sport.
You're
A
selling
23 jersey means totally different things in the city of Chicago when you put it in a Bears uniform.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
A 99 jersey in Edmonton is different when you put it on a C of L team.
Yeah, it's true. I don't
Like
know.
a 42 jersey in Los Angeles Chargers or Rams uniforms is different than a 42 on a Los Angeles Dodgers uniform.
Yep. So either way, I think at this point everyone knows our stances on 44. If anyone feels like chiming in, feel free to get a hold of us on any of the socials at Disloyal Idiots. I believe it's disloyal_idiots. I can't ever remember because we're
It indeed is.
great at them. Or hit us up. We'll be posting an article on Noons tomorrow to support the pod as well. Feel free to start, talking there. There's also a couple of very good articles up with perspective from the, quote unquote, the kids, as well as from Kevin and James on where people lie in that pantheon of discussion. I feel like weirdly the younger people were more interested in keeping it retired, whereas the olds were pretty much like, it's a number. Use it. But we've also seen it, and you've been around the program enough to understand it, and especially from the lacrosse standpoint, it was used for years. It's not like this is some holy grail that's been retired since time. It was Doc Gross 20 years ago that decided it was a good idea. So,
which is, in my opinion, turned out to be a bad idea.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree. Imagine Sean Tucker running amok wearing 44 and what that would do for recruiting.
Like, why do you think Tucker and Zaire Franklin wear 44 right now for their teams?
Yeah.
Like, it's a number. I think jersey numbers should be worn in respect to their previous jersey holders, as long as that merits it. Football 44 certainly does. I'm not sure if a basketball 44 holds that same weight.
Yeah,
obviously that is what you could debate on, but I think Steve and I are pretty clear that let the kid wear the jersey.
Yeah.
Stop causing a fuss about it.
And it seems like Red is of that ilk too.
Red
who played just after, in between the two 44s.
A person who doesn't have to worry about of 44 jerseys, of course, Fran Brown.
It's true.
He's got some other things to worry about, though, because it feels like Fran is in this spot of, wait, I have way too many people now. What's going to happen? Which I don't think is ever been a case in Syracuse football recruiting.
Correct.
Because we're on June 30th right now, and Fran Brown has 25 recruits in his class of 2025.
Right, and up until yesterday, he had 27, and that was only because of 2 decommits, quote unquote, which at this, from what is coming out, it seems very much like non-quals. So
Yep,
not academic qualifiers.
There was one other decommit earlier, earlier in the week as well. But so there have been 3 decommits from Syracuse's class of 2025 already. But first of all, again, I like to keep on reframing this because I know the phrase new normal gets thrown around a lot, especially after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the athletic space that Syracuse has been in has been kind of treated like a new normal. And I keep on wanting to refer to previous regimes and previous history. Because I want to cast our mind back to what the previous history was. Dino Babers at Syracuse. At this time in Syracuse football, and when I mean by this time, I mean this part of the season, the end of June, the beginning of July. We're not here talking about recruits. We're not here talking about 25 recruits being in the class. We're not here talking about people being decommitted from the class.
Practice.
Because
we talking about practice? Sorry.
We may not be even talking about practice. Because there just isn't that much interest in Syracuse football during this time of year. But because of what Fred Brad has done with this program, there are people to actually talk about coming into the program, coming out of the program. Because when you think about what Syracuse football was during the Dino Babers era, you were lucky to have 1 recruit at this time of the year.
Yep.
Maybe 2. Most of Dino's recruits committed in October and November of that season.
Very much so. And I think this is a change that we're going to start seeing where we get a number of commits, and then as crazy as it sounds, I wouldn't be surprised if we recruit over some of our commits, which is something that was very easy to do at Georgia. And maybe, I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happens as well, honestly. And normally, if Dino Babers were to get a recruit at this point of the year, we'd actually spend a decent amount of time talking about said recruit.
Oh, yeah, because there wasn't anything else to talk about.
But so many people have come in and come out that, again, it kind of feels like a new normal of just saying, like, hey, Fran Brown actually got 2 more guys to commit to Syracuse. Great.
Yeah, no, it's insane. I still can't wrap my head around exactly what is happening, but it's happening.
And I'm actually really glad you brought up that idea, you could say, Steve, that Fran Brown could at some point, if we get later into this year, because we don't know what Fran is going to look like during the season. Right. But there is that potential that now that Fred has like a baseline of recruits, then he could potentially recruit over the guys that he's already recruited.
Which is how we used to get guys, were the guys that got recruited over at places, and we got the chaff that got, recruited over and decommitted from a school. If he has this core of a class and then starts saying, screw it, I'm swinging for the fences, and lands a couple of guys, okay, cool.
And we've already seen that if the class is big, which it already seems like class is going to be big, Fran's also not afraid to trim roster space based on, again, guys who, in the spring pool that guys didn't show up on the roster.
Yeah.
Steve, I'd like for you, if you could, during this time, to carry out a small experiment.
Okay.
You probably have this in a spreadsheet somewhere. What has been in the recruiting era with rankings the largest class by number of recruits
Ooh, that
in Syracuse history?
I don't.
Because
do you know the answer?
I don't.
Okay.
Which is why I'm asking you if you have research tools to get to it. It's because we're at 25 recruits, 27 before 2 guys decommitted. This already might be the biggest class in Syracuse history since rankings became a thing, or at least in the past decade.
I mean, I'm trying to think.
And this is just recruits. This doesn't count transfers that Fran Brown brought in either. Maybe a class of recruits and transfers combined could match this number of just solely recruits that Fran Brown has committed to the class of 2025.
What does he have right now?
Let's actually get like an accurate number of this. We're going to go to 247sports.com.
So for 2024, he only has 11. For 25,
well, he has 11 that have enrolled early.
yes.
And that was from Dean. And that was from Dino, and he's got 12 more that are coming from.
Right. So for 25, he has 26 hard commits currently. 2020, we had 20 enrollees and 2 transfers, as well as 1 non-qual. So that would be our closest.
And remember, that was with
enrollees and transfers.
Yeah, that was with transfers. We're not counting the people that Fran are going to get in the transfer cycle next year either.
Right. So that's including, next closest was 2019 had 21 and 1, so 22 total. And these all, like you said, came together in a very different way. They were much more late in the game, much more ad hoc, kind of grabbing what they could grab. Usually we'd be sitting about now, we'd still be getting commits for 24.
Yes. And while Fran has gotten 1 or 2 of those in the summer, like it's not been that notable.
Mostly like PWOs and
Yes.
stuff like that. Like there's not really, I can't think of a scholarship guy that we've grabbed from 24. Maybe 1 in the last like 2-3 months.
And to continue what we're talking about with Fran Brown, his recruits as well are, yes, they're mostly 3 stars. However, they're of the higher end 3 stars than I can remember.
Yeah.
Because most of these guys are between 85 and 88 in terms of their 24/7 ranking.
Yeah.
And normally, when we get those type of players in a Syracuse ranking, normally those are the guys we're like, oh, we're jumping for joy for those guys because we got that type of player.
18 of the 25 are 86 and above.
Which is nuts.
Yeah.
You were lucky in previous eras, in the recruiting era, that Syracuse would get 5.
Yeah.
Maybe.
We only have two commits under 85. One of them being Luke Carney, who's a relatively highly rated passer out of Dallas, and Johnny Scatliff, who's an offensive tackle. That's 6'7", 259.
And Syracuse just got another quarterback in Richard Beeline.
Yep.
From Cardinal Hayes.
Yep. Who is 85 rated and I believe top 5 in New York total.
Yes, I believe so.
Nope, 12th via 24/7 in New York. But either way,
There you go. Mm-hmm.
Still pretty damn solid. Yeah. You know what? Let's go on the New York front for what he's doing recruiting wise.
Yeah.
Because currently, in the top 10, the number 1 Lyric Samuel from Erasmus Hall is a 4-star 89 rated who's going to Penn State. Next up is Darian Williams, who I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He plays for CBA right down the road. Committed to Syracuse. Rowan Byrne, who I really had eyes on, Iona Prep in New Rochelle, did commit to Clemson, and I believe we were in the mix for him. But then Javon Lawrence, Jordan Gibbs, Quante Gillens, Dante Bakaye? Bakaye sounds right.
Sounds right, yeah.
CBA guy as well, are all Syracuse commits. Then we lost one to Rutgers in Myron Gurham, who's a defensive lineman. And then 9, 10, and 12, who are the only other committed top-rated New York players, are all Syracuse commits. So if you want to win the backyard, he's doing it.
Which is, again, something that I know Syracuse fans have been clamoring for.
Yeah.
And this is the new normal. I said it again. I hate that phrase, but it just is kind of feels right.
No,
As we kind of
it's
yeah,
weird that it's really real.
and this allows us to kind of just readjust and refocus like how this program's going to feel once the fall ball practices start up at the beginning of August, which is not that far away.
Yeah, I mean, we're into July and kids are reporting at the end. Well, they're reporting in July for classes, right?
They should be. Yeah, that's tomorrow. Like summer semester, the second summer semester, I believe, will start in 2 weeks.
Right, which is the one that they come in for, and
Yes,
the jump.
it'll either start next. I believe it will start next week. I think if I've got my heads around how the Syracuse academic calendar will work. So that means we should see like the rest of these 2024 players come in next weekend, which will be very, very fun.
Now, I wonder, no, because they don't publish until the start of the fall semester,
No.
right? Yeah. Well, it's just going to be up to everybody who's on campus to start spotting people.
Yeah, and there will be an updated roster once fall practice starts.
Right. 100%.
Yeah, but we will not get actual confirmation of guys.
You know what's even more impressive than the new roster? The new heights and weights on the roster.
I did see that.
I am extremely I really want to see what Fran is doing this offseason and how much
If any, if anything is to go off the Cinco transformation picks and the Deuce transformation picks.
Oh yeah.
And especially with the new weight room that has been heavily posted about on social media.
Yeah, if they're advertising like that, they better be using it too.
And from what players have been talking about, also, transformative idea, access to players and coaches during the spring practice. Given what they all said, it seems like this coaching staff has made good use of said weight room and will continue to make good use of said weight room.
Very, very nice. Definitely looking forward to that.
Which means that it might be time for some of them to buy a new home field apparel t-shirt.
Right. They may be sizing out of their current ones.
And they can do that by going to homefieldapparel.com. You can as well, thanks to our lovely sponsors, Homefield Apparel, for sponsoring the Disloyal Idiots podcast. I almost said the name of our former podcast. You probably heard that.
I caught it.
We'd like to thank again Homefield Apparel for sponsoring the Disloyal Idiots podcast. You're on a Fans First Sports Network. You can go to not Disloyal Idiots. That'd be awesome if we had our own hosting website, but that's expensive nowadays. But you can go to homefieldapparel.com and use the code NUNES23. That's NUNES23 at checkout, and you can get 10% off your very first order at homefieldapparel.com. So many great things to get at homefieldapparel.com. Steve's probably on that website right now. I'm going there as well to check out some of their new things that they have on offer, such as Evergreen State, which is awesome. Some new two-tone dad hats, and one of their big projects from this past month, baseball and softball pullovers for some of your favorite baseball and softball schools.
Very nice. That looks, there's some great options. I personally found I had lost, but now I've found my retro Cuse ringer from them. Still comfortable as hell, even though it's been sitting in a drawer in my basement. Literally put it down here so I could wear it for the pod. I remember doing it. I should put it down there so I can throw it on for the pod one of these times. Completely forgot it. So, yeah, found it.
And if you want to wear that great, sweet, cute retro script shirt that Steve is wearing, head on to our friends at Home Field Apparel. Again, Nudes 23 at checkout for 10% off your very first order of Home Field Apparel shirts. Before we head to
hold on, even though we don't have a baseball team, they should put out one of those classic snapbacks that they did for us. Like old school logo snapback would be absolutely perfect.
This is why Syracuse needs a baseball program. That's all I'm saying.
Do you want to pay to travel for the entire first 2 months of the season?
This is a good point. Well, I mean, either, make a turf facility so that it's very easy when the snow stops. Or, I think just make a turf facility just in general. Because, again, make it easy to play on when the snow stops. Because there will be a 3-hour window somewhere. And you can make the cleanup easy.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to someone who in high school played his first month of the season. All practices were indoor in the gym. So
yeah, and again, Syracuse, yes, will have to probably invest in some sort of indoor facility, maybe. But again, like I said, Pittsburgh and BC have baseball programs.
It's true. It is true.
And if our friends up in the Northeast here in the ACC can have a baseball program, I don't see why Syracuse can't. Before we head on to probably the distressing lacrosse talk, actually, you might as well hit that. Because it seems like Clemson has decided that it wants to show off the money that it has. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because two 5-star recruits, including the number 1 recruit in the class, Alexis Polina, who were supposed to go to Syracuse, have decommitted from Syracuse and have committed to the Clemson women's lacrosse program.
A Clemson women's lacrosse program that has started in the last 5 years? 3 years?
If that. I think this is going to be their 3rd year. Upcoming. I think.
Right. So I guess, yeah, I don't know. I really don't even know how to take or what to take for that. Like, I'm assuming she's making bank.
Yeah, you would have to assume. Well, we don't know exactly what led to the decommitment and recommitment and to Clemson. But there is probably a good reason that to infer, and like we said, it's probably NIL money, especially the type of NIL money that Clemson has for seemingly every single one of its athletic programs.
And I don't know if you mentioned, no, you did mention it was Alexis Polina.
Yeah,
but like we mentioned the name. You've heard that name already on the podcast, including all 3 of her brothers that play for Syracuse lacrosse.
yes. It's
and also why, like, yeah, she could have gone and played for her dad at Stony Brook.
Yeah, could have. Also, again, another 5-star in Aubrey S-File, who is Spoina's teammate in club lacrosse, also decommitted from Syracuse and committed to Clemson women's lacrosse today.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, so that's 2 5-star recruits that Syracuse had committed to them, have decommitted and flipped to the Tigers.
Okay, so is Trainer freaking out at this point, or?
I mean, I would be.
Yeah, I kind of am for her.
Because again, it shows that Clemson is and willing to flex its power in terms of the resources that it has. I mean, I'm not sure if you've seen a Clemson women's lacrosse game this year. But remember, they just moved into a new specific facility they built
Yes, I did see that.
for women's lacrosse this year, in only their second year as a program. And like, this isn't even without a men's team. This is just a specific women's lacrosse field and facility, and even an indoor facility for them as well.
Yeah. I mean, that said, I totally get, like, Syracuse's, even though Syracuse's lacrosse facility is probably better than most people's lacrosse facilities, that looks pretty.
It is very pretty for what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So now we get to the point where Syracuse has to be careful, just in both recruiting spheres, because Syracuse men's lacrosse, just from my outside perspective looking in, hasn't done too much in terms of hitting the portal as well, in terms of getting some of the big name players, some of the biggest name players that Syracuse has acquired, especially in the past season, have been through the transfer portal. You think of a Mason Cohn, Will Mark, Sam English, and Jake Stevens were all transfer portal gets.
Yeah.
And at least from what I've seen, there hasn't been a commit out of the transfer portal for Syracuse men's lacrosse, which to me is a bit concerning, because there have been a lot of other teams in the ACC that have powered up on the men's side as well, just by getting transfer portal gains. So we're in a weird holding pattern with lacrosse right now in the summer.
There was, right now the only thing I'm seeing is the defender from RIT.
Yes.
D3 transfer there.
And that's not going to offset, again, the losses that you have in midfield with English and Stevens leaving, Mark also leaving from goal. So Syracuse looking to go internal for those, which is going to be interesting to see how that works out.
Ryder Ochoa, the short stick.
Yes.
Johnson.
But again, same thing.
Yeah.
None of the big like midfield or goalie names or attack names. Like,
okay, Grace is a long committee too. I was thinking he was a defender, but
yeah, but again, still the same thing. Like, you haven't seen a big.
You're not moving the needle with those names.
Yeah, it's nice for
to them. That's a perfect depth add, but that's offsetting what we're losing.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how Syracuse lacrosse, and both men's and women's, tries to evolve with the changing times of other programs seemingly getting stronger at the expense of Syracuse lacrosse. You know what also is seemingly getting stronger? CONCACAF doing stupid CONCACAF things.
Yes, very much so.
I kind of actually miss this as we go into our international Syracuse talk. Is Miles Robinson on this USA team?
I don't know if he got named to the roster or not. Let me see.
Because I actually don't remember off the top of my head.
Was he injured again?
If he's injured again, that's not great. But if Miles Robinson wasn't there, now we have an excuse for why USA lost to Panama.
No, he's there.
Oh, he was there? Well, we can't blame it on the U.S. not having Miles then. That's not good.
Nope, he existed. I don't know if I have not been able to see a single Copa match a single Copa match that involves the U.S. or Canadian national teams.
Because, of course, Syracuse finds itself in an awesome position of having two guys and two alumni who have basically pretty much cemented their spot on the Canadian national team for at least the next World Cup cycle.
Right, and both of which played yesterday.
And Tejan Buchanan and Kamal Miller for the Canadian national team.
So Tejan ended up coming on in the 76th minute. Kamal came on as a late sub in Canada's draw against Chile. I'm trying to see if Miles.
Yeah, I don't know if actually Miles participated or not, or has been participating.
He didn't play against Panama. in that
Yeah.
mess. Which, okay, whatever. Going back through for
Yeah, I don't think it's unfortunate that Miles hasn't, broken into this men's team. We know, Steve and I know, most of you podcast listeners know, just the intangibles that Miles and the tangibles that Miles brings onto a football field when he is on for the United States or for when he's playing with Cincinnati, even for that matter as well.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised tomorrow if we see him because of Uruguay and what CCV did against Panama.
This is very true.
So, or what he didn't do, I guess. So yeah, I mean, that's soccer in general from the Syracuse standpoint. Neither Kamal or Tejan are starting for Canada. And Miles is not starting for the U.S. All of them are present, and all of them, well, except for Miles, are getting minutes. But it's a very weird situation for SU soccer alums, should we say?
Well, at least we're in the spot as well where this is the first time, I think, in the Syracuse soccer career that we can actually talk about alums playing at, the international level with some consistency, or at least being part of the national team with some consistency.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's, I mean, it's kind of crazy to see. I mean, Alex was probably, when he was getting called up for the U.S. for a couple of years there, it was, that was great. And then now we're kind of in a new wave of SU soccer dominance. And it would have been even more like Miles pre-injury was just hitting his stride and looking great. And then, next thing you know,
Gruesome injury.
Yeah. I've lived through it. It's
But
but yeah, once now that he's kind of back on form, I don't think he's as good as he was prior to the injury, but he's back in the saddle.
It'll be interesting to see how far they go. Same with some of the Syracuse alum on a different type of international stage. In the Olympics worlds, there are quite a few Syracuse alumni who are currently going through the U.S. Olympic trials right now and are trying to make the U.S. Olympic team in Paris. And we can say that a Syracuse Orange alumni will be representing the Orange in Paris. As Freddie Cretended had qualified in, I believe, second or third place for the 110 meter hurdles.
Yeah,
track.
These are those points where you wish Kevin was on here because Freddie ran for Cuse for, his collegiate career. And now we're a track and field podcast because, well, we have to mention it.
Well, yeah, and it's awesome to see a Orange Olympian, especially on the track field, which, as most people know, to make the U.S. track team in the Olympics is hyper competitive. And Cretended finished second in the finals of the 110 meter hurdles for the U.S. trials. Just 600ths, or no, 1/10 of a second behind the eventual winner.
Yeah,
and Grant Holloway
is 3-time world champion. Grant Holloway.
So the only, first of all, finish a 10th behind him is incredible. The first, as Kevin put in his article on News Magician, the first 110 meter hurdle race with 3 athletes under 13 seconds in the 110 meters, which all 3 are qualified for the Olympics for the U.S. national team, obviously. So big congrats to Freddie, who this is his first time going to the Olympics. And I think for a lot of people, including me, who was, part of seeing Cretended just dominate the 60 meter hurdles when he was in college with Syracuse, this is a long time coming because he has unfortunately been injured the last 2 times that an Olympics have come around. A Summer Olympics, at least, have come around. So this is very, very fun and good to see that Cretended is at least healthy for this and will be representing the United States in Paris. So if you weren't thinking of watching the Olympics, well, now you have a reason to.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I was not thinking about watching the Olympics that much this summer.
Oh, Olympics are always a must-watch in our household. My wife always does a Olympic opening ceremonies party.
Oh, that's fun.
It's yeah, just it ends up being an excuse for our friends to come over and just watch the opening ceremonies because they're always impressive. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's always Winter Olympics for me is absolute must watch. Summer Olympics is like pretty solid. So we'll see how the Orange do in Paris this summer and go from there. I know there's a couple others that are still vying.
Yeah, I'm furiously scrolling through our News Edition archive, seeing if I can find Kevin's piece on some of those Olympics.
Full breakdown on on who was up for
exactly. I cannot quite find those right now, but I know there are a couple other Orange alum who are trying and vying for Olympic spots on the U.S. national team. So best of luck to them.
Absolutely.
One final thing I want to mention on the pod. Best congratulations to Sue Ludwig on the women's basketball front, who announced her retirement from basketball, and one of the first assistants that was hired to Felicia Legetchak's staff will depart and retire after a couple of years coaching the Orange. A great career for Sue Ludwig, who was a high school coach most of the time as well. I believe with West Hill. Yes, at West Hill, before joining the women's staff, the women's basketball staff under Felicia Legetchak, and of course a player at Syracuse as well. Other than that, that's impressively for us. We've got it about 50 minutes in of a summer podcast, which normally for a summer podcast, we'd be scrambling for stuff to talk about.
Right, before TBT starts, which we don't have to look forward to this year.
Unfortunately, no TBT in the this season. Bayham's Army releasing a statement that due to other player obligations and injuries, they could not field a team that they believe was worthy of competing in the tournament. So no TBT for the basketball team. What we can do is just blame Andy for being in Atlanta for the USA lost to Panama.
Mm-hmm. That sounds right.
Because this is clearly Andy's fault.
He's the one that made Tim Weah punch a guy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, he's the reason why Panama scored in stoppage time or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right.
Mm-hmm. Will the dice go USA's way against Uruguay, and are the results go their way?
I'm not holding my breath.
I'm probably not. Will this finally get Greg Berhalter fired?
If they lose and if they crash out, yeah, I think it will. I think, well, I don't know. Who the hell knows? It's all.
Because I think I speak for many USA soccer fans to say I would very much like to see this Greg Berhalter era end.
I was fine with him staying on when they renamed him. I have not seen anything since that has made that the right decision.
Me too.
If that makes sense. So.
Well, when we upload this podcast, for those who are watching live on Twitch, YouTube, or on Twitter, when we upload this podcast, you will know that this is actually going to be will be in July, which means we will be in the month that EA College Football 25 releases.
We're almost there, folks.
We're almost there. Steve, I haven't got a chance to ask you this. I've talked about this with Andy a couple of times. Who is going to be, other than Syracuse, one of the first teams you want to dynasty rebuild or dynasty play as?
I don't even know if I've thought of that.
Because at some point, also, the three of us are going to have to make a decision about what team we want to do. And, of course, what probably will be a connected franchise for us three.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. No, that's. That's always a weird question. I still remember at one point, I was definitively the Youngstown State head coach.
Wow, that's an
And
interesting one.
yeah, that was a battle.
Yeah, I can imagine so.
So that was one of those when I was in college. So when I was in college, there was this lack of thing called the internet until very recently. So we had one Xbox that like 6 of us would come to and all play our games on it for that week, and then you would go to the next week. That was our connected. That was Dynasty. Was everybody had to come and play their games on that Xbox. And yeah, I think we all picked like like mid majors to run with.
Andy has claimed North Texas. I'm thinking about one of the Carolina schools in the mid majors, either Charlotte, East Carolina, or Coastal Carolina. I'm thinking about one of those.
CCU would be a solid choice.
Yeah, I'm thinking about one of those 3 teams as my school.
Maybe I'll go Maction.
You could do a very difficult one in the MAC. Buffalo. Because Buffalo in the MAC has not been hot.
No, but
and what I love about also EA College football is that you can create your own conferences. So obviously, since North Texas and the Carolina schools aren't necessarily in the same conference as Buffalo, there could be we could easily create a conference that would suit all of those needs very, very well, and not have to worry about ridiculous travel budgets like Cal and Stanford have to worry about, and SMU have to worry about. Which that's also happening this month with all the conferences now becoming newly official.
That is just crazy. Maybe Akron.
Akron, I feel like I'm going to sound really awful here. Akron, I feel like it's kind of a cheap out because Akron has been quite good at times in especially recent memory.
Yeah, maybe. I'm looking down through the list. I'm like, I wonder.
Exactly.
I've always had a soft spot for the Zips because of their quality soccer program.
Indeed, they do have a great quality soccer program. Much like Syracuse. Syracuse now has a great quality soccer program.
Kennesaw State. There you go.
Kennesaw State, I believe, still didn't win an FBS game last year. So that is a fun one. One of the newer FBS programs. Of course, all of us are probably going to be rebuilding Syracuse.
You know what? I just realized it was not Youngstown State. It was Louisiana Tech.
That's a good one, Louisiana Tech.
Maybe go back to them.
That's a fun one. I like that choice. Of course, I think all of us will be rebuilding Syracuse offline. Steve and I, depending on how we want to figure this out, will probably upload our own separate rebuilds, our reporting of our separate rebuilds online on Nudes to give progress on how we do. Like I know Steve did a couple of years ago, quite a few years ago now during the pandemic.
The COVID mess. Yeah. And then my PS3 finally died. So
it lived a good life.
It did.
Now it's time for the PS5. Now it's time for EA College Football 25. We are so close. I cannot wait. And we will probably still have kind of these abbreviated breaks in between episodes just to wait on more Syracuse news. And just because, again, we're busy during the summer. A lot of us are, enjoying the summer while we can. As you can tell with Andy gallivanting across America once again in Atlanta right now. We will still be periodically, coming in and out. We will most likely pick things up back to a regular weekly schedule when fall practice begins. And boy, will that be very, very exciting.
Yeah, I would say, dare I say, end of this month when NCAA drops, we're going to be.
Oh, yeah, we will be. Which means I will also have to invest in an Elgato so I can show everyone my horrific football gameplay.
There you go.
Because I'm planning to GM this and let the computer play out.
Nice.
That's how my my Syracuse dynasty that I'm going to rebuild is going to be that I'm not going to play any of the games. I'm going to let the computer play them out and
you
just
handle
build the roster.
all the offseason stuff.
Yeah.
100%. That's always the fun.
Exactly. We will update everyone when we upload and download and suffer potentially through those games of EA College Football 25. It will be very, very fun once we get that underway. And of course, like we mentioned for pretty much the good part of the first beginning of this podcast as well, it'll be very, very fun when Syracuse actual football gets underway. Alongside Steve, I'm Christian. Andy somewhere in the universe saying so long. And thank you for listening to the Disloyal Idiots podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network. If you're watching on Twitch, YouTube, or Twitter right now live, thank you. As usual, Sundays at 8 p.m. We'll let you know when that happens at a more weekly schedule. If you're listening on your podcast weapon of choice, thank you so much as always for listening. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so that we can expand the Ottoman Empire. Alongside Steve, I'm Christian. Thank you all so much for listening. And as always, go Orange.
Go Orange.